Hello and welcome to this morning's workshop, Creativity to Connect. My name is Naomi. I'm a drama therapist for the Battersea Education and Wellbeing Service. And we also have Ella Muldoon, who is our team's admin support, and she'll be moderating for us today. And we'll begin in a moment, but first I'll give you a brief overview of our NHS service. The Battersea Education and Wellbeing Service is an early intervention service for child and adolescent mental health. We cover over 20 schools in the Battersea area and offer a range of support, including parent-guided self-help for children experiencing anxiety or behavioural difficulties, drama therapy, occupational therapy, workshops such as this one for parents and carers, and support and training to school staff around emotional well-being. The presentation will run for around 45 minutes today, and we'll have a 15-minute Q&A at the end. Right, so let's begin. The theme this year for Children's Mental Health Week is connection. So today, we're going to look at some ways that you can creatively connect with your child and support their emotional well-being. The first part of this workshop will look at ways you can understand and recognise your child's emotions. The second part will look at creative strategies to promote emotional well-being and connection. As we start, I want to highlight that, as this quote says, you can only do your best, try not to stress, and what's precious is the relationship between you and your child. The emotional well-being of children is priority, so please do speak to your child's school if they are struggling or if you are having concerns. So part one, good emotional health. Now, as parents and carers, you know better than anyone that children go through a wide spectrum of emotions each day, and they can move from happy and excited to angry and sad very quickly. So some research shows that when our children are toddlers, they may change emotional state as often as every 45 seconds. And although emotional changes are not quite that frequent in primary age children, their brains are still not fully developed, and the parts of the brain that think, feel, and make choices are still learning to connect as they grow. If they are able to learn to connect the emotional parts of the brain to the love-seeking and reasoning parts, it means that they are experiencing healthy emotional development, and this supports them in their overall well-being, their ability to experience positive relationships with peers and adults, academic performance, ability to engage in hobbies and activities, and their ability to understand themselves and the world around them. For healthy emotional development, children need to learn to emotionally regulate. Regulate and regulation are terms that schools, therapists, and mental health professionals are commonly using now to talk about children's emotional states. And regulation means that we have the ability to be aware of, manage, and express our emotions. Learning to self-regulate is a key milestone in childhood development. And when a person is regulated, this means that they are aware of the emotional state they are in, they're able to understand and accept their emotion, and they're able to make choices to manage the emotion. But, as you guys know better than anyone, this is not the state children are in all the time. So before any of us can learn to play, do our tasks, our bodies, specifically our central nervous system, must be in a regulated state. Now, one way to think about emotional regulation is on a scale, which I've demonstrated here through the seesaw. So the middle is where Winnie the Pooh is, and this is where our nervous system is regulated. This is the calm and relaxed state, and being here is the perfect spot for focusing, learning, playing, and working. The different parts of the brain can communicate with each other when we are regulated, and children are able to listen to problem-solving ideas or be supported to make or learn appropriate choices. However, if our body is feeling dysregulated, it can be really hard or sometimes not possible at all to manage our emotions, focus, energy levels, or control our behaviour. And dysregulation can look one of two ways. So you can fall on the too low side, which is shown here by Eeyore. And this is called hypoarousal or low arousal. And this is when the nervous system is running slower than usual. Someone that is low aroused or hypoaroused, they might present as low energy. They might move slowly, sluggish, lethargic, bored, or seem really lazy. They can also be withdrawn or sad, and feeling low arousal can really affect our mood as well. Now, on the complete other end of the seesaw, we have, let me bring that back, there we go. We have Tigger, who is high aroused, and this can also be called hyper aroused. And someone here might present as really high energy. Tigger's quite a well-known, bubbly, bouncy character, but he's a bit all over the place. He can't quite contain his energy to focus. And this is what it's like when we're in hyper arousal or high arousal. So when someone's in high arousal, they might be frustrated, worried, wriggly, overexcited, mad, or angry. And we all tend to like seesaw at these different levels of arousal throughout the day, and your child will be no different. There are some of us that feel really sleepy after lunch, others who bounce out of bed in the morning. And none of these states, so high arousal or low arousal, they're not bad. We all go through them at different points in the day, but they can be useful for different times. So low arousal before bed, you've got a much better chance of sleeping. High arousal before a party, you'll probably be much more fun to be around. Now, looking at this seesaw, it's just really useful to understand that children aren't born with the ability to get to the right spot by themselves. They need a little bit of help to learn where they need to be and how to move between these different regulation states. And this is what emotional regulation is. So in order to help support your child with regulation, the first step is identifying where they are in the scale. What sort of things do you see if your child is dysregulated? So here we have some examples of what low arousal or hypo dysregulation might look like. So yeah, we can see withdrawal, silence, appearing distracted, tearful. Maybe the little boy on the top left is a bit anxious or panicky. So how do we know when they're not just like bored or lazy? And this is the big question. And the truth is, we don't always know. But from building the relationship with the child, knowing what they're usually like, we can kind of assess, is this common or is this unlike them? Is there something that might be upsetting them? Or if they're presenting in this low arousal, floppy way, we can just ask, what is the physical need presented in this body language? And how can we support them in bringing their energy sort of a little bit back up to the regulated state? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. High arousal or hyper dysregulation. Now this can, on the Tigger end of the scale, this can look like tantrum, meltdown, shouting, aggression, storming off. And like I said, it's not black and white. We don't always fully know when the child is dysregulated, but we can take an informed guess from knowing them. And to identify dysregulation, we're looking for signs in their body language, their voice tone, Are they able to make or maintain eye contact? Are they able to stay on tasks? Are they able to listen to you and process the information you're giving them right now or not? And again, we're asking, what is this body language communicating? Body language is always showing us something. We communicate, I think it's 95% through our bodies. So through our bodies are our main way of expressing how we feel, what we need. And so if they're high aroused, they might be showing us that they need some support and regulation to come back down. Now, in your child's primary school, you may have seen them use something called the zones of regulation, which is another way of looking at regulation. And this is a really great example of a way to develop language for children to learn about if they're in high or low arousal or if they're regulated. So here the scale that I showed you before is represented through colours. So we have the blue zone, which is low arousal, the green zone, which is regulated, the yellow zone, which is slightly higher, perhaps slightly regulated, but a bit less regulated, which is the yellow zone, and the red zone, which is the high arousal, Tigger, a little bit out of control. So that's really nicely demonstrated in the zones of regulation, which might be something that is used in your child's school. So, knowing all this, what do we do when we are dysregulated? The big question. So far we've discussed that regulation is on a scale, and we've looked at some ways we might identify dysregulation through body language and knowing what the different types of dysregulation are. So now we will have a look at what we can do to support children once we've identified that they are dysregulated. How can we show our understanding and support to them? To regulate a child, it's very important that we first connect with their emotion, then relate and use our relationship with them to validate and support it before we try and reason with them. And this is because children's brains are still developing and the connections that support logical thinking and care seeking are still growing. A brain-considered approach can help us to meet our children where they are at. Now, I'm sure I definitely can, but I'm sure most of us can recall a scenario when we have tried to reason with an upset child and they haven't been able to respond despite our good intentions. And I wonder if, in turn, you can remember a time where you've been really overwhelmed by an emotion, perhaps anger, sadness, or laughter, and you haven't been able to think clearly or apply any logic to the situation. When the emotions are just so heightened, you're just in the emotion. And the reason I'm bringing that in or asking you to remember that is because it's really important to note that when children are dysregulated, this is what they're experiencing too. So when children are born, the fight, flight, and freeze and fear response at the bottom of the brain, the red bit here, is fully developed, but the care-seeking and reasoning parts are not. So when children are dysregulated, this red part of the brain, the fight, flight, freeze, is running the show. So first we need to consider their need for regulation support, which tells their nervous system, it tells their body that they are safe to support them. And when we help to regulate a child, this can bring the next part of the brain online, the yellow part, the relate part, which then begins to seek love, care, and attachment and affection from you. And this means that they might become interested in expressing how they feel, receiving a hug, shedding tears, or engaging with a creative exercise, which again, I'll speak more about in the second part of this presentation. And then once the child is regulated and back relating or in relationship with you, listening to you, trusting their connection with you, this can bring the green part of the brain online, which is the reasoning part, the logical thinking, the future planning, the choice making. And when this part of the brain is online, your child is open to suggestions about how they might problem solve, They might be more able to have a discussion about the choices they made or think about what they will do next to redirect their energy. So this bottom-up brain approach creates a 3-step process: regulate, relate, and reason. So when a child experiences a challenging or distressing emotion or sensation, their parent or carer can help them to learn to regulate. And then relate, which is connect or care seeking, and then reason. And this whole process, this is called co-regulation. And it happens through how the parent responds to the child. And the child internalizes this process as you repeat it day after day after day. And they eventually have the potential to learn to regulate themselves. So, for an example of what regulate, relate, and reason looks like, let's have a watch of this short video clip from the Disney movie Inside Out. How do I close it? Trying to get out of this video. There we go. Thank you for your patience in that. Okay, so from that video, what ways did we see the characters in this short clip connect and support the regulation of the pink elephant? So what helped the pink elephant to process his sadness and get ready to go to the train station? What worked and what did not? So things people are noticing or have noticed in the chats are, so coming in with happiness and not meeting the child where they were at didn't help the pink elephant to move on. But it was when the blue character connected with the pink elephant's feelings, their sadness, and was able to validate it, that then the elephant was able to share their experience with them, to ask for a hug, and then they brought the top part of their brain online and were able to problem solve. So in that short little clip, I find it quite heartwarming. We can really see how the process of regulate, relate, and reason could take place. It's one example of many. But the main things to take away from it are that to support children in regulating, we first need to connect to what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, tune into it. And we might use our body language, our voice tone, we might sit by them to do this. And we might also use our language and acknowledge their mental state. We might say, I know you are sad, or I can see how angry you are from your fists. When we use when we use language like this, it helps children to realize how they are feeling, which then supports them in regulating. And sometimes we can ask them questions if we don't know. So I wonder if you were sad, and you can kind of portray that with your body language, and then that might help your child to sort of tune into it and realize, yeah, I am sad, and express that. And this might support them in being ready to connect with you and then redirect their energy or reason in the situation. Now, all of this brings us to part 2 of this workshop, creativity. So now we will look at ways that creativity can help you along with the process of regulate, relate, and reason. We will continue to explore how at each stage this can strengthen your connection with your child and support how they can connect with others. Creative tools to regulate children can focus on either their physical experience, for example, how they're breathing, their bodily experience, or using mindfulness to notice things about their state of being, or their environmental experience, so their routine, the sensory input, the music, the amount of people, amount of toys, objects in their lived environment. And there are loads of creative tools we can use to support regulation, both through their physical experience and through how they engage with the world outside and in their environment. So to connect to a child's physical experience and support them in regulating, creative activities that are based in their bodily experience are most ideal. And these can be exercises that you can step in and do during play when you notice your children becoming a bit like too highly aroused, struggling to focus, or a bit all over the place, overwhelmed. Or some of these are quite good to gently build energy back up when they're low aroused, not wanting to get up and play, daydreaming, disconnected. And these activities are co-regulation activities. They help you to relate and connect with your child, which might make them ready for some reasoning. So, some creative activities that you might like to try that use the breath and body are hand breathing, which is both of you put your hands out like this. So if you were mirroring each other, your child's hand would be here, you would be here, like this in a mirror. And you do some breathing. So you take your index finger and you inhale to the top of the finger and exhale. And inhale and exhale. And you do this all along your hand and back. And another one that's quite similar is rainbow breathing. I don't know if you'll be able to see all of me. But you breathe in, so you say to your child, what's the first colour of the rainbow? Okay, red. So you breathe in and you make a red arc. Go. And out. And yellow. And out. Going through all the colours, red, yellow, pink, purple, green, and then bringing that energy into your heart. Doing some deep breaths, and you can then go back out again. And both these exercises are regulating for children because it involves both of you doing it together. It's co-regulating because by both of you breathing together, you're telling your child and their nervous system that you understand their emotional state and that you're sharing the experience with them. Simon Says is another drama game that follows quite a lot of the same principles. It's a game where the leader gives some instructions and you with the word Simon Says at the start, and then they'll give other instructions without that introduction. And if it's without the introduction, you're supposed to catch on and not do the action. So for example, it would be Simon says, clap your hands. Simon says, do a big stretch. Naomi says, wave your hands. Because it's Naomi says, you shouldn't have to do it. And there are some great YouTube videos on how to play Simon Says. If it's a game that you don't know it, just type Simon Says into YouTube. But what's great about this game is it can involve different actions. So if your child's really high aroused, like all over the place, you can start really high, like crazy actions, and then bring it slowly down into something that might require more groundedness, more breathing. And also the fact that, again, you're mirroring each other, you're having to hold attention on each other, means, again, you're telling your child's nervous system that you're in the experience with them and they are safe. Yeah, and this is really regulating because you're connecting with your child by playing together and mirroring each other. You're helping to tell children that you understand their mood, you understand their emotional state, and it's safe and they can calm down, and this can help them to connect with you. Another one that is quite similar, and I'm going to treat you to a demonstration, is the rubber chicken, which is a shaking exercise. And how it works is you shake both arms and both legs in order, counting down. So you shake your right arm 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Left arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right leg, left leg. Do 7 shakes, 7, 7, 6, 6, 6, 6, going down to 1, and then at the end you shake your whole body and you go rubber chicken, and you can do a jump or rubber chicken. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed my demonstration. So there are other demonstrations on YouTube. If you just search the rubber chicken drama game into YouTube, you should find plenty of hits. But this is one that you can do the shaking fast or slow to kind of bring energy up or bring energy down. And you can also add in an extra element, which is really regulating, of encouraging children to tune into their bodies. So after they've done all that shaking, you can ask them or notice yourself and encourage, like, do you feel hot or cold? If you're really hot and warm, maybe you're excited and happy. Or can you feel your heart beating? Is it slow? Maybe this helped you calm down. And you can model to children by saying things like, after taking those deep breaths in the hand breathing exercise, I feel much more ready to wash my hands and get ready for lunch. Or other ways it makes you feel. You can just tell your child it makes you feel calm, it makes you feel a bit more able to focus, and that will help your child learn, this is an option for me too. So bringing in check-ins about the body and emotion during play and pairing these with connection from the caregiver supports regulation for children. Again, it affirms to them that you can meet them in their emotional state and that their big, crazy feelings can be manageable and worked with. However, as well as bodily regulation, there are lots of things we can do in the environment to support regulation for children. So regulation and the wider environment. And there's this really beautiful quote here that says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. There are a few creative things we can do to regulate a child through how they engage with their environment too. So we can create a regulating creative routine with lots of these like body-based activities included. And we can also encourage children to engage mindfully and in calming ways with regulating ways with their external environment. For example, using activities that use regulating external materials. So it's not with the body, it's an external object you're bringing in. And these are things such as Play-Doh, which you can buy, or a fun activity can be making it for yourself. And again, there are lots of recipes for how to do this on YouTube. And usually it just involves flour, water, and a little bit of oil. And sometimes food colouring. And Play-Doh or clay is really known for its therapeutic properties. You can squish it, pound it, pinch it, mold it, release anger into it. Play-Doh or clay provide a kinesthetic learning opportunity that can be used to enhance the development of mindfulness and focus. So you can get the child to notice the colour, the texture, the feeling of the Play-Doh, and this can be really calming. Other ideas could be creating a glitter bottle through putting some coloured glitter in a plastic water bottle with some water and food colouring. Or a similar thing, but it's an activity that avoids glitter, which can be really messy. You spill it once and you will see it every day for the rest of your life. Is making lava lamps. And again, there's some really great tutorials on YouTube on how to do this. And they usually just involve any kind of cooking oil, food colouring, water and plastic bottles, and then sometimes something warm like a torch or a radiator to heat it up, although that's not always necessary. But yeah, making the glitter bottle or the lava lamp is a regulating activity within itself because it requires focus and attention, but also watching the object after, watching how the glitter moves in water or a lava lamp moves is really calming. And so working the glitter or the lava lamp or some time for Play-Doh into routines can help children build regulation into their everyday. And this is really supportive for children because it tells them that they will get the time and space each day to calm down, which means when other difficult or challenging things happen, they learn that they can still calm down even when they're upset. And this helps them learn that they can manage their emotions. And all of these activities are physical and use senses, which means they are self-regulating because they require a gentle focus in the present moment. We can also do creative activities in their environment, whether this be the park or your living room. So this could be in the park, can you spot 5 things that are green? What does this tree feel like? What colour is it? Or when you hug this pillow, how do you feel? Is it nice? Notice your body. Are you breathing slower? And this can help children to learn the skill through their relationship with you of observing things in their environment. So observing the blue sky or how green the trees are or how soft the pillow is or comforting in their bedroom or living room. And as you observe or talk or play with it together, it affirms to them that their environment is safe and they can play and they can be regulated, which is co-regulating. So some things that might be supportive, I know that like these creative activities won't work in all situations. And when children are really dysregulated, they don't always feel like an option. So other things that might work are tight hugs and deep pressure. Noise voicing, which isn't always an option depending on where you are, like if you're in a flat or if you're on a bus, you can't always do this, but if they're crying, it's just, or yelling or tuning into the energy where they're at and going, can we make this noise together? I see that you're crying, let it out, and kind of like you would have done perhaps when they were babies, when you like, you just go, and kind of, as they're crying, eventually encourage them to join you in making the noise, and this helps them express it. And also by you doing this with them, it tells them like you understand their feelings and you're there and you're trying to support them. And there's also, I touched on this a little bit before, something called mirroring and asking. So if they're really angry, or they're feeling something but you don't know what they're feeling, you can model it yourself. So you could clench your fists, say if they're angry, give them a shake and go, I wonder if you're angry right now, demonstrating that with your body language, which helps them to learn the skill of looking at you, assessing your body language, checking in, is that how I feel? Yes, maybe I feel angry. And if they're really highly dysregulated, like high arousal, trigger sometimes, if possible, get them to use the energy. Can they punch a pillow? Can you get them to run 5 laps of where you're at? Like moving through that fight, flight, freeze, and then coming back to you, and might make them more ready to relate to you and then after reason. So once we've supported children in regulating, they may be ready to relate and connect to us. And a fantastic way for children to relate to us and learn about their emotional well-being is through creative play. And this can be enacting story characters together or using toys. Children learn through play, and it's their preferred language of communication. And it can help children to express and process intense feelings that might be unacceptable outside of play. So developmentally, children, when they're born or when they're young, do not have the inner resources that adults have learnt for thinking through difficult feelings. Their brain hasn't developed this capacity yet. So it might be if you make regular time to play, to work with imagination, to work with characters and stories, that they can explore feelings like loss, upset, anger, and fear. And we can support them and do this by asking them to show us the characters, to show how the characters are feeling by commenting, I wonder if the superhero stance means that they feel confident. I wonder if this character is grieving, and can they put their hand on their heart, and can we feel that together? Can we show that in our dramatic play? And using that kind of language that relates body to emotion helps children to learn the skill of noticing their bodily cues and what they might be feeling. Also, expressing feelings through imaginative play can quite often mean that children will express things that they would be sort of worried about upsetting their parent or caregiver in other situations. And so, yeah, creating time for imagination or creative play can be really, really valuable. Some children communicate their worries through drawing rather than talking. And if your child has a worry, you can ask them to draw it, and then you can ask open, non-analysing questions. So, for example, this picture we see here is by a child who was worried about coming back to school after the pandemic. And the monsters show that he felt that the world was really scary. And some questions you could ask about a picture would be, what would the worry look like if it was a character? What would it say? How would it speak? What is life like for him? What frightens him? What makes him happy? It's important that when we do this, we are not interpreting or analysing, but instead we're establishing a dialogue, encouraging that in the picture, and we're talking in the third person. And there are some really great resources on YouTube. Again, if you just Google like art therapy with children, or asking questions about children's artwork therapeutically, a few things might come up that might support you if you want to know a bit more about that. And when we work with pictures or we work with stories, we can use a tool called distancing, which simply means that we're not working with the literal situation because that might feel too difficult or overwhelming, but we're working with the characters. And when we can work with the character, if we can help support the characters' fears and validate them, they're practicing contacting their feelings, understanding what they are, regulating, and also your child might not be ready to say that they're sad and anxious, but the robot's sadness and anger, you can validate that, and that will spread the message to your child that their feelings are okay. It's okay for them to be anxious. Music is another really great way to relate to each other creatively and build your connection. And the best kind of music is the music that you and your child will make together. You can use household objects as musical instruments, i.e. shakers, drums, using your hands, clapping games, pasta in plastic water, etc. Children can also use drumming and clapping to express their feelings. For example, anger, drum like a herd of elephants. Tell a story of anger on a drum. Or to move towards calm, can we make the sounds of trickling water or a sea breeze? They can create their own beat or tap along to music, and you can clap or drum for them and make a beat as they sing or rap. And whilst they rap or sing, they may express their feelings, and by you maintaining the rhythm or the beat behind it, you're being grounding for them, because you're being reliable and you're sharing the message with your child that you can relate to them and you can create safety for them to express themselves. Another thing which is quite popular is you could also help your child to make some different playlists for different moods. Some of you might have this already, like a bedtime playlist or a morning playlist. And if you make some of these playlists together, your child might also ask for you to play the songs that relate to how they're feeling. And this can be a really fantastic way for them to communicate without words what emotional or regulation need is present in that moment. And you could also work this into your routine: calming music for calming times, high music for a party type thing. And this brings us to the final part of how creativity can support regulation: reason and reflecting skills. So now we're moving up to the very top layer: how creativity supports reasoning, problem solving, and a shared language. So once your child is regulated and you have related to each other, to help support their reasoning skills and emotional awareness, here are some creative activities you can try to give you and your child a common language to use when speaking about feelings, and also to support the development of the care-seeking and love part of the brain, connecting to the logic and decision-making part of the brain and that whole development. So one creative activity you could do is you could draw a body map together, thinking about how these different emotions that you've explored in your play, you've explored with your breathing exercises or through other things, other ideas you might have, how they're experienced in the body, and perhaps drawing this and acting out the different feelings, and then referring to this when having reflective conversations after this regulation can support you when you're trying to reason. For example, after you have regulated and related your child, looking at the body map to reason and saying, I wonder if you felt sad. Did you feel sadness in your chest, like the blue here? What are some things we can do when we are sad? I love the frog here. You could also use pen and paper, cards or old magazines or old calendars to make affirmation or relaxation cards. And these could be cards with affirmations such as, my feelings are important, it's okay to be scared sometime, or ideas about what you can do when you are sad. So when I'm sad, I can cuddle up with my teddies or ask somebody for a hug, listen to music. So making these cards together will help your child practice reasoning and problem solving when difficult emotions arise. And this also provides a great opportunity for you to discuss feelings and emotions together, and for you to talk a little bit about feelings and model for your child talking about emotion. And this can be really affirming for children. It can help them feel that they can come to you with their feelings, that you can help manage them, and that this helps them learn to accept and validate their own feelings and develop the skills to regulate by themselves. Lastly, an idea to support reasoning skills that might be really suited to the times where you're just running on empty. As I know that you don't always have the energy to plan all of these elaborate activities or gather all this stuff together, and that sometimes you might just need rest and your child might need that too. And a way you can rest with your child and still support their emotional reasoning is to watch a program you both enjoy or read a story together, and then discuss the characters' emotions and feelings at the end of the chapter, after the movie or film or program, or in the advertising breaks. And this is a great way for your little one to practice reflecting and reasoning. And you can model examples for children as you talk about the characters, which will help them learn to respond and reflect on their own emotions. And they'll also hear from you listening to them, or feel from you listening to them, perhaps that you respect and that you can emphasize with their thoughts and feelings. The questions you might ask are, when this character did this, How did he feel? How did he show it? What did he do? And how, if he did do something to make it better, what made them feel better? What made them feel worse? Or you can model this by being like, I noticed this character was really angry, but he was hiding it. You could see from his eyes. I felt like he was upset. What do you think? And you can kind of ask your child. So this brings us to the end of the presentation part of today. Here we have a list of webinars the service is offering this academic year. And the next one is in spring, and it focuses on supporting your worried child during exam stress. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is where this video will be uploaded for you to have a look at when suits you best, if you wish to, and a little bit more about what we do and what we are offering. But I'd like to say a massive, massive thank you for watching this presentation today, for showing an interest, and for all of the support and interest we've had in Creativity to Connect. So massively thank you, and I'll be doing some questions now.